There.
You all played in here?
Yeah.
Was it for him?
No.
I mean, some of it was.
All right, Lacey, we are live.
Ready to go?
We can.
Second, I'm trying to get connected here. Okay, it is 6 o'clock, so I will call the meeting to order. Let's go ahead and do roll call. Lori Belargent. Here. Ian McDonald. Matt Foucault.
Here.
Lacey Oster. Here. Bruce Belargent.
Here.
Marge Bull.
Here.
Corey Cole.
Here.
Our district mission: together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Is there a motion to approve the agenda tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Good Mark.
Matt. Or Marge, okay. And public comment. I have one, so Danny, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So Danny, you'll have 3 minutes to go ahead and you can state your name, address, and once you're ready, that's your time.
Danny Erson, 62nd Street, Somerset, Wisconsin. Good evening to the board members. As an involved parent of my children's education, I'm wondering about the brand new policy 2510 on the agenda tonight, which appears to be a good and encouraging policy. It seems the school board could be having oversight over textbook adoption. In certain states, 19 or 20 in this country, the public gets to view the textbooks before the adoption and offer their support or concerns for the material. I am aware that other public school districts allow for parental involvement with this type of policy, and I think that would be a good thing to encourage. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, then moving on to our early graduation. Trent, do you want to add to this? I know that this is stated on here, but anything that you can, it's linked on?
Yeah, so we have 4 current seniors that have applied for early graduation and have met their credit requirements and everything that they would need to graduate early. And between our senior class counselor, Ms. Stobig, Sarah Stobig, and myself, we support them in their endeavors. They have some new things that they're going to be approaching after they graduate early, some apprenticeships, some starting their full college experience, and some entering the workforce. So we've brought some kids forward last year. This will be that time of year.
Okay. Any questions for Trent? Okay, so we'll put that then on the next agenda. Looking forward at the hockey co-op renewal. Those are also linked. Do you want to speak to that, Troy?
It's our annual or biannual renewal for the hockey co-ops. So this would be, our current co-op is expiring after this season, the 23-24 season. So by February 1st, WIA requires that we have all the paperwork in place, that we renew for the 24-25 school year and the 25-26 school year. Our girls hockey co-op is currently with Amory, Richmond, Osceola, and St. Croix Falls. So that's who make up what is the Western Wisconsin Stars. We share the expenses following the season. We divvy it up based on number of players that they had, and we had, and kind of a formula that we've been following for the last several years of doing this. All the other schools are on board to renew again or are working through the process similar to us. And so I ask that we renew our co-ops. If you look at the boys side of it, we are sharing with St. Croix Falls and Valley Christian on that. And again, in talking with our head coach, both are 1,000% in support of this. They I think it's a very good situation we have. We have really healthy numbers. And so we encourage that we keep it going and we sign off on this and move forward with it. So, any questions?
Some of the questions regarding fees for hockey. You know,
Yes.
It kind of plays into the co-op. I'm curious, how are the other co-op schools, so each player essentially is, each school is charging an amount per player, right, at the end of the year?
Yeah.
Do you know how the other schools, are they paying that fee, or is each school making the player pay? I mean, significantly more than other sports, so I'm just curious
Right. I think
why we aren't picking up more of that.
most schools, so I did actually, when I took on this job, one of the first things I did was reached out to other schools just to kind of get a feel for what others are doing, because it was brought to me like New Richmond's covering some of their ice time within their school and things like that. And so I just, so just a general statement towards that would be that I think we're pretty in line with a lot of the schools in the area. And when I say schools in the area, I talk about River Falls, Hudson, you know, some of the schools that we don't share the co-op with. And yeah, so I guess part of it is, you know, the budget side of things is why we're budgeted for where we're at. And so I think it was brought up maybe a year or two ago when Dr. Bezick was still here to look into a little bit more of that. But you know, that's all I know of it at this point, but I'm obviously willing to look into it.
Do you know what it costs per player out of their pocket to play?
For us, at Somerset, our kids, I believe, pay $65 to sign up. And then I think they pay their, I think it's like $800 to the program, to the hockey program.
So like a football player, for instance, would they pay just that $65 fee? Do they pay
Correct.
anything else?
Correct.
Just 65, okay. And then my last question would be, so the boys and girls, they each have a booster club, right, that supports them?
Yep.
Does the school oversee those funds, or how?
The school does not oversee their blue line or red line, whatever they call their clubs. They do not oversee those clubs. Much like we don't oversee the SBA Basketball Association or the SYBA, the Baseball Association. So all those things are their own entity. Some can run some things through Fund 21 in our district, and then that's what we would oversee. So if they raise, so for instance, we worked parking this summer at concerts and groups put it on, and so the money was paid back to the school, and then we ran that through Fund 21, so now those groups have access to that money that way. That makes sense.
Okay, but it never leaves the district, doesn't go to that.
That money does not leave the
It would
district.
stay here, they would
Right.
request it?
They would have to request it, go through that process, yeah.
Okay.
I would love more information, I think, on that. I know that Trent had brought it up like a year or two ago, like being the only sport. And I get the cost of it, but it seems so inequitable when you have that being the only sport. And I get that it might cost more money, but it's still, I feel like as a high schooler, to have every sport cost $65 or $865, I mean, that to me is really significant.
Right, it doesn't feel right.
And I just even look at hockey pads, like, I believe players supply their own, correct? Do football players supply their own hockey pads?
They do not.
I don't know, I think it's something to,
But I would say that a lot of what we support in the athletic department, the teams are still raising funds above and beyond that too. So like, we have X amount of dollars for like a helmet that maybe we can only buy 5 helmets with that, so then the program go above and beyond and kick in funds from their fundraising to supply more helmets or a better helmet,
yeah.
upgrade like that type of thing. So I would say
Has it ever been
that,
discussed, this is kind of, I've heard of other schools that have one sports booster instead of all these separate entities. Has
Mhm.
that ever been?
not that I'm aware of, no.
I don't know, I'm just out of curiosity, just for that equitable kind of piece that, okay, I mean, the cross-country team might have a much fewer number, but if you kind of put that percentage, so I mean, I just, looking at the sports and some of the things that some sports have and some sports don't, I mean, it's visible sometimes, but that's not even, but that's besides hockey, sorry, I'm going on I just think it'd be
Oh, that's fine.
interesting to get a
You're
little
good.
bit more.
Yeah, like I said, I have some of that data already, so I can, for sure, put it into official form and let you guys share that with you, what I have of what some schools are paying and what it actually goes towards and all that stuff that goes with it, so.
Just to be clear, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah,
To
I'm
bring
sorry,
back
this
to,
is
like,
kind
what
of a
are other
little off
schools?
of what.
Well, I started with the co-op, but yeah, I agree. I think I would love to see something, whatever the methods put on the agenda in the future would be. But the goal that I would like to see is, how do we make all of our high school sports as equitable as can be from a financial standpoint? Because I do think I think it's crazy that a football player is pays $65, is provided all of their equipment they can play, but a hockey player pays $65 plus $800 plus has to supply all their gear. We don't own ice, so there's all kinds of other questions that go into that, but I would like to see us try to provide all sports to anyone that wants to play, and not have the financial piece be a hurdle for someone.
So
And then-
this is a side, but, okay, golf, we don't own a golf course, do we have to pay to use the golf course?
We haven't seen a bill for,
So
I mean, if
that's-
we're hosting a tournament,
Well,
that's
don't
it.
the players have to buy a membership to play?
I haven't.
I thought you had to-
been told that, yeah, I mean, we're kind of.
I think in that instance, if you think the golf course, they,
That's like donated?
Now, if we host a tournament there, they bill us that,
Yeah.
and then we charge the entry fees to
Yep.
the other schools, but yeah.
Sorry, I'm just more curious.
Did that answer your question about
Yep,
future?
I just want to
Okay.
make sure we're getting you the information that you want.
Yeah, that'd be
Yep.
great. And then my last thing about the hockey co-op, I know everybody's on board for girls this year. Boys, nobody else has ice, but from the girls' perspective, does Amory express an interest to be the host? Does New Richmond, has that conversation come up?
nobody has expressed that to me,
Okay, so you feel good about Somerset's it for this contract and,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I'm good with it, I think we've done a good job doing it, and to be honest, I think we have the most in the both programs, so I mean, it kind of makes sense to be here. I do know that our girls went over and practiced in Richmond the other day. I don't know how often that's happened in the past or not, but
In the event in the future, New Richmond said, hey, we want to take it, is there a financial loss to the district if we lost that host spot?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because like I said, we divvy up the bill based on the percentage of players they have and things like that, so it might come down to if they charge more for their ice, or versus us, and then, so that cost could go up that way, or maybe they charge less, I don't know.
Okay. That's all, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe, do you know, so that extra money that we're talking about that you have to pay to play, does that 800 or whatever go to the school to
No.
pay?
That is into the clubs, hockey association, that's their money that they use, and so, it's another sidebar to that would probably be, like all gate revenue from a football, basketball comes to the school, and we keep that, all gate revenue at the hockey rink they keep.
But I've always wondered that as well, like why don't we run the gate at the hockey rink? Because it is a school event, right? Essentially, the high school game is played there, that becomes school property, right? Like, how come we
Short answer,
never
yeah,
collected that?
I have no idea. Been that way as long as I've been here.
I think it's viewed, maybe, just throwing it out there, it might be viewed as a way for them to recoup a little bit of all the expenses that they are incurred, so. Again, nobody's getting rich off any of our gates regardless, right?
No, I know, but I'm just saying,
It is a little bit.
I've seen that rink full at sectional games, I mean,
That's
if
different
it's,
though.
if there's some gate fees that come in that would limit the amount of what they have to pay.
So all WIA events are different, that is run through the school, and
Well, those are.
WIA has a percentage that they take and then we keep. So that's why when we do like hosting, like the, regionals are based on home seed and all those things, or higher seed, better seed. But when it gets to sectional, we put in for we had the boys sectional again this year, we put in those both boys and girls for next year. And so then that gate would be, part of it stays with us and the rest goes back to the WIA, so. Yeah, we think we do a good job with what we've had in the past, so, we're looking to continue to have that, so. Can I leave this with you to be signed at some
Yeah.
point?
Perfect,
One for each
thanks.
sport.
Okay.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Okay, ooh, we get a referendum update. This is exciting.
Got myself, Von Dirks, I'm one of the partners at Wolt, and Robert Sem, and Tyler, excuse me, I was saying thing in Troy because he just spoke. And Randy's here as well to talk schedule and budget. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the 3 different projects. I'll take the auditorium edition at the high school. Robert is going to take stadium, and then Tyler will talk about the elementary schools quickly. So with that, just we can skip through that one as well. Quick reminder, this is the project scope in terms of what we're doing here. We're really trying to look at it as, while Mark and Johnson will be building everything together, we've got 3 different sets of documents in terms of how the contractors will be looking at bidding these projects with the site work potentially tying together with the same bidders as we go forward. Take a look at the next one here. I do want to point out our core planning group members again and tell you what a great job they did in terms of providing us information and reference in this process as we go forward. Just a reminder, we try not to look at any project as this is our project that we're doing for you, and so it's got a Wold stamp on it. This really reflects what you want to do as a district, and so the feedback we got from every single individual in all the projects going forward here is what's going to be designed and built into this, so that reflects what you want as a community. Take a look at criteria statements here. Too many to read through here, but the reason we develop criteria is to define what those issues are. That's the rules that we design by to make sure that what we're doing matches all of that criteria as we go forward, and that leads into what we do at the user group level. We'll talk about that momentarily. So, quick update here. Our site plan has come together. We're extending the parking in a couple of different areas, providing the parking around the auditorium addition, which is in orange off the backside of the gym there. We are master planning for eventually, if that maintenance building moves, how that would fill into the process, as well as in the future, if you do expand athletics, how that ties into the lobby here. So this auditorium lobby could become an event lobby in the future as we think about it. So really trying to think past not just this project, but where we go in the future as we move forward. Here's how the plan fits into the building itself. A little bit more developed floor plan than what you saw last time. So it's about the size of that gym box. If you think about those precast panels in the back there for the gym, the auditorium's that size plus larger when you see the fly loft in massing, just to give you some context. And let's blow it up a little bit here so you can see it in more detail. We have the 600 seats. This is showing on stage the sound shell layout because we want to plan for that coming into it. The back of the house has our dressing rooms, green room, scene shop area. We've got the long hallway that goes alongside those existing exit doors out of the gym. We're going to be designing that as a lobby gallery space for the art program, wrapping around into that front lobby, glass in the lobby coming in. And then our seating is a shallow rake in the front near the stage and steeper in the back, and you'll see that momentarily as we come in. We're also expanding the toilets next to the existing toilets in the back of the gym space there, so we've got the ability to have those be dedicated just for the auditorium and closed down from the rest of the building, or you could open up the doors and use both sets of toilets if you want to, but just a way of mitigating when you have games and auditorium events at the same time, how you would handle that. And then we've worked with Tim and the company on how we're going to be loading into the kitchen, making sure we've got some improvements there in terms of the existing freezer and cooler and how we're bringing new deliveries into the backspace, and a connection corridor from the band so that they can wheel their instruments directly around and onto the stage. So we've got that little link in the back coming out of the music suite area. We've just completed what we would call user groups, and what we do with user groups is for every single space we meet with the 3 or 4 key people that are actually the users of that space to gain the detail for how they want that to work. So if we just look around this room, for example, what kind of cabinets do you have? Do those have to have locks or not? Are there sinks in there? Where do you want the light switches to be? How do you want that to happen? And so there's dimmers capability happening there. So all the detail that goes into these spaces, the users have provided. Predominantly for this project, the dressing rooms, green room, that makeup area, that's got a lot of active interest from the users in terms of what that works like. The auditorium, because this is a brand new thing, they aren't able to provide as much of that detailed information, but that's why we have our theater consultants on board so they can tell them this is what we do in most places, you might want to think about this, and walk them through those details so that they can provide good information to us. So we use this set to coordinate with our mechanical and electrical engineers and the other disciplines on the team as we go forward. So every single space has that in terms of the project. And let's look at some three-dimensional images here. So one of the things we're at just about all the way through design development right now. What you're gonna see are more functional aspects in the project. We've been holding off on putting the exterior detail and some of the interior detail down until we had all the functional components down, just so that we're being efficient with time and not designing something that's sure to change. But in terms of size, you can see the size of what I would call the house space here. The large box is actually taller than the gym. Where that lobby corridor connects to it, we're keeping that at the same height so we don't have snow drift issues onto the existing roof, so we don't have to upgrade the structure in the gym. The fly loft itself over the stage, where all the backdrops fly up out of there, that's a really tall piece on the back of this. What we're going to be doing to keep our construction simple is we're doing that theater out of the same basic precast concrete panels as the gym, but we'll have glass and brick wrapping around the front and the back with some of the scene shop areas, the lobby entrance, so you get more of a finished aesthetic with those and more of that utility aesthetic off the backside of this as we go up, which will also help with costs as we move forward. Here's a view of that with the roof taken off, so you can start to see how that house lays out in terms of the seating there. This is also showing, we've got two side pockets that open up. Instead of having an orchestra pit and having to go down under the stage with that, we've got spaces on the side of the stage for choir, for orchestra, for doing the musicals, to utilize that space. And the stage itself easily accommodates your whole band, your whole choir with that sound shell piece. And then in the back spaces there are some of the green room and dressing room functions. You're not often going to see it from this view. It will have a roof on it when it's done. So let's take a look inside and start to see some of the interior. So this would be, we've just come into the auditorium lobby now. Our main doors for the house would be off to the right there. It won't say auditorium like that. We're putting in some placeholders in case we want to come up with a different name for this, but that is a two-story or almost a two-story height space in there. So we've got some acoustic panels, some decorative lighting coming down into that area. Really trying to make that the showpiece as you come in. With that corridor space, that's currently the outside of your gym, is going to have display cases and the ability for pinup for some of that gallery space as we go in. But all that main entrance to the house will be from this point in the front, performers in the back as we go forward. And these are real preliminary now. These will evolve and change, but just to give you a sense of what we're doing. Here is a view from the control room in the back of the house looking towards the stage. So we're going to have clouds up above, and the clouds are those white pieces that run over the top. Those are basically covering up the catwalks from a masking standpoint, but they also provide reflection from the stage so that we get good acoustics coming into the space. In addition to our theater consultants, we also have acoustic consultants on the project to make sure that this space sounds fantastic when it's done. We're using sort of a mix of painted concrete with those wood accents to try and soften the space a little bit and provide a little bit of that contrast as you go down in. The backs of the seats dark so that when the house lights go down, they provide less contrast in terms of what you're looking at towards the stage. We've got a couple of, you see the white rectangles on either side. That's to facilitate some additional projection for shows so that you can incorporate video elements in as you're doing different performances. And that is showing what acoustic shell on the stage would look like as part of that component coming in. This is a view inside the makeup green room area. So off the back there are the boys and girls dressing rooms, costume storage, other elements off the back. But this area is really intended for the makeup so that all the performers are together there. They're really seeing what's going on with the show. There's a corridor to the left that connects us out to the stage as well as to the scene shop. So we've got our cross stage exits and entrances from the back. And then this area is also going to be wired so that you can see what's going on the stage. So you're not missing cues or anything else in this area as you're waiting for your performance. Just a quick overview on schedule. I mentioned we're in the middle of design development right now, near the tail end of it. And so the last steps that we have through this month are really getting into those materials and finishes, really fleshing out what it's going to look like now that we've got the coordination of the detail. We're looking to issue drawings for this in end of March, beginning of April, and so we're going to do two separate packages. We're going to do an early precast package as well as any other materials that we think working with Markin and Johnson, we can get ordered sooner than later to help with that. And then the second package will be the rest of the construction as we move forward here. So we're on track as far as that goes. And we're also on budget right now. When we first did our design development budget, we were a little bit over, not to worry too much, but we know that we're, a little bit high there, so we've made some adjustments in terms of square feet and some other items to help bring this one back into alignment. And so we feel very good with where we're at right now from an estimate standpoint. Questions on the auditorium before we move into the other projects? And we'll
Is
talk
there a-
about construction schedule near the end, so we can package it together with all the projects.
Ticket window incorporated into that front lobby too, like for flow?
They didn't want a ticket booth. They felt that that would be too congested, and so.
Oh, okay.
So that would be at a table function. We've got storage so that they can store all those elements. They pull them out into the lobby, but they didn't want to fix where a ticket window could go so that it wouldn't, they could control where people queue up for those tickets as they come in. Plus, we're moving further and further away from paper tickets as more and more things are electronic.
And then your plan June 3rd is groundbreaking?
Yep,
Yeah, okay, your plan.
first day of summer. Yeah, the completion will be June 30th, June of '25. That'll give you all summer to get it all packaged up, get all the equipment in there from the owner side. So by start of school, September of '25, it's all good to go. Any questions on the cost, budget, estimate? As Vaughn said, we're right where we're supposed to be, so we're really happy with that.
Let's take a look at the next project.
So this is the elementary project. This is a scope diagram that kind of indicates everything that's going on here. We haven't had in-depth user input meetings just because of the scope is heavy and mechanical and electrical in nature. So we've been having a lot of conversations with Tim and his team. We did meet last week with the administration to talk through this plan and also some of the more detailed components, so we are doing some of that outreach. But the green here indicates the classrooms that are getting new ceilings and lighting, door hardware, countertops, sinks associated with that, and then carpet and paint to really refresh all those classroom areas. The cafeteria space will be getting new ceilings and acoustic wall panels, and we'll see an image of that here in a minute. And then the corridors will be getting a lot of new ceilings and lighting, as well as some student cubbies, so we talked a little bit about that last week to get some detailed input on what those improvements should look like. And then the 4 main toilet rooms throughout the building are going to be renovated, so new toilet fixtures, new tile, all of that stuff to bring those up to the same type of branding and materials that the other buildings have had throughout the renovation projects there. And then throughout the building, especially the exterior, we're replacing all of the door hardware as part of this project as well.
Tyler, can I have you go up to the podium? That way we can
yeah.
see you on camera.
Yep.
Thank you.
So this image here is a design that we're working with for the cafeteria area. And so one of the concepts that we wanted to, and we heard through a lot of our input gathering, was bringing this building up to the same type of brand standards that we have in the other buildings. But we did want to pay homage to the fact that this is an elementary school, so we wanted to bring some fun, bright colors in. So you're seeing some of the same shapes that you could see at the high school level and middle school, but bringing those into this space through the acoustic wall panels. Again, we'll be doing new ceilings and lighting throughout this space as well. So from a schedule standpoint, we are wrapping up design development and moving into construction documents, and so that's where we're going to be heavily detailing the project. Our engineers are hard at work doing all of their calculations and things for the project. So we anticipate that this one will start on a similar construction timeline. We'll be doing another round of estimating. We do think that we're a little high on this one. We've been working towards coming up with some options to get that one back on budget. Randy can talk a little bit more about that too, but we think it's doable. It's just a matter of refining our drawings so that way the estimating is a little bit more accurate on what the actual project is going to entail. So
Yeah, at the schematic design stage, it's really not that uncommon to be a little more than the budget, just because you try to incorporate everything you can. Less details to go off of, so we try to put everything we can into that budget. So it didn't shock us too much that we're over. We do have contingencies and so forth to take care of that if it came to that, but really, we've already reduced scope a little bit, value engineered some things to get it closer to where it needs to be. So we're just in the process right now of finalizing that second budget to finalize that. With respect to the schedule, we do show on there August 21st to 24. Objectively, like to get this thing done in one summer, but there may be things that we can't acquire, door hardware, mechanical, whatever that may be. Some of you, Bruce, you know some of that, how difficult it is to get some of this material these days. So we're gonna leave ourselves a little bit of an opening. If we need to come back the second summer, we'll take care of that, but we're gonna know that fairly soon before, end of school in 24 here to determine that. So I'll kind of keep that a little fluid.
The mechanical equipment, are you ordering that? Is that what that says?
Kind of retrofitting more than we are.
Yeah, as of right now, our team doesn't think that any mechanical needs to be procured ahead of time. So it'll all be in one bid pack.
It's some fans, some other things. It's not really providing new rooftop units. I think we're just converting, upgrading some other ones that we have, some existing ones. So it's gonna cut down some lead time issues.
Oh, playground, I didn't see that in there. That's
I was just about to say, we're also coordinating
That's
the
it.
playground with the playground vendor. We just got some new information from them today in terms of a couple of different options that are within that budget range and trying to figure out what the next steps look like for the playground. So we're not designing that, we're coordinating.
That's gonna be, it's in that number.
But summer tear out replacement.
Yeah,
same thing.
Yep.
And then can you just go back to that slide with all the whole, keep going one more, I think. So you said all of the green rooms, those are all getting repaint, carpet, ceilings, lighting?
Like,
Yep.
Yep.
All of every classroom essentially?
Mhm.
Yep.
Lights and brights.
Yeah,
And none
well,
of the lighting is LED at this point, so updating that.
When new cabinets were put into the middle school, there was a whole wall that did not have electrical outlets. That's not going to happen, is it?
Shouldn't.
As it gets drawn,
Pardon me?
as they draw it in.
Well, please draw them in.
We'll try.
And then you mentioned the cubbies, what, are there replacement of hallway cubbies, or what is that piece?
Yep, replacement of all hallway cubbies. So we met last week to discuss heights, sizes, and things. Right now, there are 2 kids per cubby, and that leads to a lot of issues, and so we're actually gonna be providing a cubby for each student.
So everything is coming out, everything is replaced?
Correct, except for the base of where the cubbies are, we're gonna reuse that part.
And
So I
actually,
take
Laura,
it
there shouldn't be
summer
too
school.
much electrical that's changing because these are existing
Stay tuned.
rooms, so it's really taking the cabinets out
Well,
and
they
putting
were
it back in.
existing rooms at the middle school too.
And really, the cabinetry updates that are taking place in the classroom spaces is just countertops. The base cabinets are in extremely good condition, so we did an audit of all the cabinetry and talked, a lot of conversation with Tim. He's been great on kind of helping us narrow down what really needs to be done, and so he identified that countertops were the main priority and sinks associated with that.
Good, I'm glad that we're reusing what we
Yep.
can.
Mhm.
It's actually one of the reasons in the color image there where we've got more sort of that full prism going around is that with the existing cabinets remaining as they are, the wings already have a color to them, so bringing the Spartan red in throughout the building isn't feasible. We want to make sure that we've got the big accent wall in the cafeteria is Spartan red, but then it transitions into the colors that go out into the different wings, so it still maintains that elementary feel.
Are you doing any energy rebates or anything through Wildan, or I don't know what you use in Wisconsin?
Focus on energy.
Okay, so we should have some of that going back after.
Yep.
Did we do that last time? Did we get something back?
Yeah.
Got some decent rebates back.
Yep.
Any other questions on the elementary? All right, let's talk stadium.
All right. Stadium, you'll see here on the site plan covers the football field and the track area and some track and field amenities. To go over the scope overview, we're going to be overseeding, top dressing and fertilizing the primary field itself. Along the interior of the track where we'll be doing heavy construction to build the track, we'll be redoing the irrigation and also installing new sod in those areas. We're gonna be the infill D zone for the high jump, you can see there on the top part of the plan. That's also where the new video scoreboard will be, which you can see on the left, which I'll get to in a second here. And then we are also relocating the pole vault, long jump, and triple jump. And then we have our critical bleacher repairs and new press box. I should note that the track is getting an additional lane, so it'll be at 9 lanes. And then we've had a preliminary meeting on the press box and the critical bleacher repairs, but now that we've settled on the scoreboard, that's the next thing we're gonna tackle as far as the design and dialing in on the scope of those two things. The field will also include improved drainage, so we're gonna be adding catch basins along the interior of the track that are gonna be piped most likely to the middle school pond that will also help with drainage. And then one other thing to note that is still sort of up in the air right now, but that route to the middle school pond would require some significant replacement of asphalt and potentially some areas of that baseball field that's up there. So we have come up with an alternate route that goes up towards the discus shot put area and then over to the pond, and we think that we can do that and actually replace the discus and shot put area and have it be cost neutral or less than doing the direct route through the asphalt and the baseball field there. And that was an ask in the user groups, was if we could try to address that area up there, and we didn't have the budget at that time, but like I said, I think we will be able to accommodate that replacement, so that was a bonus at a cost neutral solution. And then on the left, you'll see the scoreboard, and we, Mark and Johnson in the district coordinated getting quotes for that, and a purchase order has actually been issued, and that's the version that will be provided. I believe it's 24 by 12. I should know that. It's a large, nice video scoreboard. And so the procurement of the scoreboard itself has happened, and then we will be including the installation of that and all the electrical, audio, visual connections to the press box in the package that is bid. One other thing, we'll have a new perimeter fence, some new perimeter curbing around the track, some other minor site amenities. Schedule, I would say that we're a tiny bit behind right now. We're still at the tail end of DD, but we are still more than confident that we'll be able to hit our issue and bidding time frame. We had some logistics to work through with potential bleacher modifications and the width of the field. And now that we're through that, our engineers and landscape architect are, full steam ahead, and we're confident we'll be able to still hit all of our dates there, if not actually improve upon them. And this project came in slightly under a budget. I don't know if Randy has anything to elaborate on that, but we're looking at potentially using some of those cost savings on the other two projects as determined and prioritized with the
It's
district.
trending under budget, not quite there. Yeah.
It'll be on or under budget.
Down or under.
I think that's the important thing to note. Even though we're doing these as 3 projects and we've got the budget line items for each, it really is $1 amount to complete all the work. And so we're trying to make sure that everything balances as we go across.
Still fits in that 22.9 referendum budget. The other thing to note, the start date is going to be mid to late spring. So we're going to need a little bit extra time to get into this site before summer hits. So we are going to steal a little bit of the springtime to get in this field, but completion by the end of summer, so it's ready to go for football season.
And there are some tricky irrigation requirements during the track install itself, and then obviously when the system will be down for construction. So we've had some general conversations on temporary measures and when final things will be in place, but I think the point being is we'll make sure that everything gets the water and the maintenance that it needs to throughout the duration of the projects to make sure everything stays healthy. And then the completion date is a week earlier than the elementary school, just trying to get the middle of August so we can get kids back on there for fall sports as soon as possible.
Can you go back one slide again?
Yep.
Can you just orient that, so the stadium there, scoreboard currently is up on the left-hand side?
Scoreboard, I believe right now is in the center.
Okay.
And in our discussions, there was a preference to move it to the right. It's a little bit more in favor of the home side.
So that's where it will go?
So that's currently where it's shown, yes. We don't have it dialed in exactly, but we know we're gonna orientate it so it's facing the home side a little bit more than it currently is.
Okay, and then long jump, where's the long jump now?
There's It's currently right about here. Both of the pole vault and the long jump and triple jump are up here.
So it'll move down.
Correct.
How does that impact bleachers?
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
No.
Okay.
Plus
And then-
stop the kids from playing football down there.
Yeah, right. And then track, where do you add that ninth lane, inside or outside?
It's going on the outside.
Okay. And that can be added without
We're-
bleacher?
We're still working through some logistics. We think there might, the bottom right stair, if you will, we might need to rotate that slightly to be able to maintain, we're trying to maintain the exact width that you have now or get right close to it. And so we're dialing in those details. The track currently actually slopes outwards and towards the bleachers, which is not standard and not recommended. So we're actually going to be draining it inwards, and so we're working through some of the curb fencing details now, but we should be able to dial in on the exact width and if a minor bleacher modification is needed. But it would be minor in scope and budget if we had to do it.
And the track, is there asphalt underneath that layer of,
Yeah.
so you take does all of that come out?
There's gonna be quite a wide subsection that gets taken out to accommodate this.
New base,
Yep.
new asphalt, new track surface?
Yep, and then irrigation heads are in there too, so we're not going into the field, but there'll be, I think it was about 15 feet, I think we were estimating, from the inside of the current track will be taken out.
And I think my last question, so the sod stays, do you do compaction tests? Like, is there a standard over time that you look at?
There will be like inspection or investigation things that are required in the documents. We have also had our civil engineer and landscape architect walk the field. And then I think 2 weeks ago, our landscape architect walked the field with Tim too, to address I guess how robust the field is and improvements we can make. One other thing to note is there actually appears to be poor coverage in the current irrigation system, and we think that's because of a lack of capacity, like it doesn't have enough power to hit everything, so there are areas that aren't getting irrigated properly. And so talking with Tim, there is a 2-inch main line that runs to the north of the field, and currently it's fed from the south of the field. So we're actually looking at feeding the stadium from the south to the north, and we think that will help with the irrigation and the field condition itself too.
But, I mean,
But the field
as it
itself
sits right now, it's good still.
it's getting renovated.
Is there anything you can do, you were talking about all the drainage going to the holding pond?
Yep.
Is there anything that we can do about using holding pond water for irrigating? Our water bills are huge. Is that possible? I don't even know if that's legal.
I don't think it is, but I don't know for sure why. But we can ask our engineers that.
Okay.
There is a possibility, it's gray water
Right.
reuse for that.
Yeah.
It would require essentially building a pump station, more or less.
And maybe it's not cost effective, I don't know.
It may not be. It's not usually a approach that we take for 2 reasons. One, it might be cost prohibitive, and two, if you have a drought year, you don't have irrigation. So it's
No, it would
depending.
be to supplement,
Yeah,
not
just to
replace.
supplement.
Yeah.
We can ask our
We can-
civil engineers what options we've got for that.
We put one in the last job.
You did?
But it's another one too, in the spring when you get all the salt runoff, you kill your hole. You can kill your hole.
Spent a lot of money on filtration to get that water good, get that used.
Well, the salt,
Uh-huh.
it's an issue we've seen on holes too. So where are we getting the booth? What side?
The press box?
Yeah, the press
Sorry, right
box.
here.
So we're just.
On the home side.
We're putting a new one in, so
Yep.
then what's happened to the other one? You turn that down and get
Yeah.
rid of it? So we'll have nothing on that side, everything will move over to
The old side.
Actually.
The visitor is gonna
Still there.
stay.
Yeah, actually, the
We're
visitor.
removing the home.
Yeah,
The
I was like,
visitor side was-
wait, yeah.
So we're keeping the visitor shed.
Yes.
For storage. All of the team usage will move over, so the new press box is gonna be bigger than the existing one that's there.
Okay. So new, bigger press box for both teams. Visitors stays as is, but is gonna be converted to storage.
The box at the top of the bleachers?
Yeah.
I feel like you have a question, Bruce.
Not for your.
So we'll go through a user group type meeting for the press box itself to figure out the privacy and the separation of the teams and you know, countertops, et cetera. But it'll definitely be wider than what's currently out there.
Can we just go into the bleachers? I know we're not doing a few repairs. When this whole project started, it was, this seemed like the talk was replace them, they're in bad shape. Is that not the case? I mean, what kind of repairs do we need to do with them?
It
Are
was
they gonna last us a long time?
It was partially because of the repairs, but we also knew we were gonna be looking at a new press box, and sometimes those are tied to, you know, contingent on one another. And then we also had not exactly figured out how that ninth lane was gonna work, and if we were actually gonna have to move the bleacher. We investigated moving the bleachers, you know, on both sides to accommodate. We've been able to figure out cost-effective ways to not have to do that. So we're still addressing those repairs that were needed. It was sort of a, you know, a compilation of other issues that were leading us towards, well, maybe we should just replace the whole thing.
But when complete here, they're gonna be in good shape to last us.
Up to code.
Up to code,
Yeah,
structurally
that's it.
sound. Yep.
Remember, that was one of our
It was
main
a-
line items
yeah,
that
it
we
was a-
looked at for value engineering to get the project down to a cost that the community would support. The questions on the stadium? Talk schedule real quick here.
Yeah, so I'll hit a couple of these
Yeah,
general
please
ones,
do.
and then Randy, if you got, so we just wanted to let you know, we are having weekly coordination and referendum check-in meetings with the design team and the district. Then we also have monthly project oversight committee meetings. Those are ongoing and will be ongoing throughout the durations of the projects all the way through construction. We've identified several cost savings, you know, to get the elementary school cost down and the auditorium down, so we're on or under budget. And like Vaughn had said earlier, we're nearing the end of design development in all three of the projects. And those are approximate schedules there for bidding. We have an early precast package for the auditorium, which is the end of January.
Yes.
We're gonna issue just to make sure we get those precast box panels ordered and on site, and that'll be one of the first things that will most likely go up. And then project-wise, we have one more, it's sort of a final user check-in for the auditorium, not necessarily a design meeting, but just here, making sure everybody sees where we ended, we've met all the criteria, guiding principles, and then we're also gonna have material and finished boards to look at with the team, and that'll happen in early January. Playground vendor is currently working on scope recommendations for the elementary school. Like Vaughn mentioned, we actually got that this morning, so we'll be analyzing that and fitting that in the budget and talking priorities. And then we're estimating 1 to 2 user group meetings remaining for the elementary school and the stadium, you know, for things like the press box layout and, you know, any other finer details for the elementary school, et cetera. And then, like I said, the purchase order for the stadium scoreboard has been issued.
As we finalize the renderings, if you saw the preliminary versions tonight, we'll also be updating boards that you can have here at the district office, at the different schools, so that people can see, hey, coming soon type of project, type of thing. And if you want renderings for the website, we'll have those available as well.
So Robert and Tyler, as they talked about the DD sets, once we get the DDs in hand, we price them up. That is the last time that we put a price together up until bid time. We'll be far enough along design-wise that all the uncertainties will be addressed at those documents. Takes a lot of the risk out of the play. We still have contingencies built in their escalation, design contingency, et cetera, to take care of anything that may have changed or been tweaked. But generally speaking, once we're past DDs, our comfort level is much higher. Recapping the schedule, we'll have a busy bid season from probably February through April of the 3 projects. And then once April hits, we'll have a lot of activity on the stadium. Come summer, it's gonna be campus-wide, of course, at the elementary school and the high school. We'll try to get as much as we can done at the high school for the auditorium, to get the shell boxed in before school starts, so we're not being totally intrusive to that small parking lot in the back. So we know it's gonna be a little tight driving back there. We'll do our best.
So, I'm guessing we're not doing anything with the track this, Somerset's not using the track for any training practice in the spring, right? Trent, Shannon?
Correct.
It's one of the things that we want to take advantage of with no ability to hold a meet right now, we actually can get on your track faster than we get on other districts' tracks.
So maybe some Brandon and Troy are working through.
Yep, so we've talked about some creative ways to be able to get kids to a track. So I've connected with area districts that are all willing to kind of work with us, and it'll probably mean a season of getting some kids on a bus and getting them over to that surface. There's, some training, certainly not ideal that we can do on campus, but it'll take some patience and creativity to get through one more season, so.
Question about parking. So when you guys did the last project, the new bus parking lot, was there any talk about connecting that and the parking lot in front of the high school? Or is there talk just for flow? Because right now it's so difficult to go around behind the high school. Now that it's painted, just with auditorium access and entrance?
One of the reasons that we don't.
Are you talking about this?
Yeah, a pass through there.
Is to keep your drivers separate from your buses, because otherwise it creates chaos. And so it really was about separating those two to get the bus flow to work as smooth as possible. It is striped for overflow parking for different things, but not wanting to have people take that shortcut and start messing up the buses as we go forward.
We did explore that too financially, but it was pretty spendy, I think.
Do you feel good about the amount of parking for the auditorium?
I think in general, your campus is sort of maxed out in terms of where parking is right now. I think that at one point we had talked about with everything, the soccer field would go. That's the opportunity for future parking, and I think you're going to need that in the future, but at the current stage, it's about the maximum amount of parking that you have. Usually with auditoriums, however, it's an event situation as opposed to a day-to-day situation. So you have all that overflow parking for the bus area, you've got the parking in front, you got the middle school, so you have lots of different ways to get there. It's not right at the auditorium, so you're gonna use the building to pass through for some major events.
We did discuss expanding the parking lot to the south there, Plan South, but that was a big ticket item for a retaining wall.
That's where the hill is now?
It's a different size, yeah. All into the six figures.
And I think at the last meeting, Ian had mentioned, if there is a problem in the future, we could always explore some potential additions, because there is, it's not close, but there are some other opportunities to add spots, since like Vaughn said, that expansion was sort of, voted down the last time, and so, we tried to do it that way, but given the current constraints, I think this is where we're at.
Great. Any other questions?
I think we just wanted to say thanks to everybody. It's been a lot of time, weekly. And he's not here, but a special thanks to Tim. We've been relying on him a lot, and he's been a great resource, him and his team. So just appreciate it. Makes our process go a lot smoother and a lot easier. We appreciate it.
It's cool to see. Thank you.
At the end of your presentation there, you had a question mark about the next update. Do you have a plan for when the next update will be?
We were thinking maybe mid-January, because we have had our final check-in on the auditorium and gone through materials and finishes. But that could be something we could pick at the project oversight.
I'd
But
say
we just wanted to
January. We've got WASB in there and some other events that will take some time to go and make sure that everybody's here for that. But that would give us a really good timing for updating those renderings and going back. So. And then there'll probably be another board update as we move towards the end of construction documents for the auditorium there around March. But we're happy to come back whenever you want to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, then moving on to our overnight travel request for the cheerleading championship. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
This is linked to the agenda as well, but anything that you want to say
Sure.
about it?
Yeah, so all the details are in the document there, but really excited to share that our high school team qualified for UCA Nationals, which is the most prestigious national competition for high school cheerleading. There's many that are offered, but this is kind of like the big one that everyone dreams to go to. And it has been our goal for the last 7 years to qualify and then be able to actually feel like we have a competitive chance down there and have a group that is committed to making that happen. And this is the year. So we've done the first step, which is the qualification. I should say prior to the qualification, last spring when we met with parents, we let them know that this was our goal, if we could check all the boxes so we didn't just spring this on them. But we checked off our first goal in late October of qualifying. And then we've been working hard to fundraise between the end of October and now to feel like we're in a good spot to actually say, yep, we can make this happen. And we are there. So this is kind of the information for what the trip would entail. It's in February. Looking to travel February 18th through the 13th with our actual competition dates, February 10th through the 12th. There are 3 rounds of competition. One would be on the 10th, and then if we advance through, we would compete again on the 11th, and then if we advance again, we would compete on the 12th. So that's where those competition dates come from, and the travel dates around it. We chose to travel down on February 8th to try to avoid any problems with potential weather delays or airport delays. We would hate to be arriving down there late at night on the 9th and potentially have to be up and at the competition venue at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. So, and then leaving right away on the 13th, the day after the final round. It's held at the ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex down in Orlando. And lodging, after speaking with the parents, we landed on staying at a VRBO in Kissimmee, which is right outside of where the ESPN complex is. So travel, we'll be flying down because time is of the essence. We don't have time to take a bus down there. And we'll travel as one large group. Parents may or may not be on the same flight as us. If they're choosing to book that, they will. Otherwise, all of the cheerleaders and myself and Anna will be traveling as one large group. And then for ground transportation, once we get down there, it would be via rental vehicles that either myself or district approved parent volunteers, I'm working with Troy on what that would look like, would drive. As far as costs go, no expenses to the district. We're fundraising everything, and then families are contributing what they're able to. And then the rest is obviously covered by the fundraising. So those are the details for our trip. We're looking forward to it and hope that the school board and the district will support our efforts in getting down there.
How many are going?
We have 10 high school cheerleaders that'll be going down there, and then 2 coaches, possibly one of our third coaches would be traveling with us too.
And then parents?
Parents
Who are
too.
the ones too, or whatever.
Yeah, and right now I would say that every cheerleader will be represented by at least one adult down there, which will be great. We've been waiting a long time for this trip to happen, so they've been ready to.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Great.
I'll make also a shameless plug, and if you guys want to pass these out, we have our showcase on Friday night. All of our K-12 cheer teams will be performing. Pep band will be there, and the middle school dance team will be performing. So if you have no plans on Friday night, I encourage you to come out to see exactly what we do and watch some cute kids cheer, and it's a great time. So I invite you all to attend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And congratulations on qualifying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, then moving on to our superintendent report, we'll start with the administrative team and going through the district and building state report cards.
Perfect. So I will start. So this presentation is linked to the agenda, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at it. And we've just kind of briefly touched on the report card a little bit when the admin team was here about a month ago talking about building goals and state assessments and those kinds of things. So this is really designed to give you a little bit of just a 50,000-foot look. School and district report cards are complex. There's a lot of analytics that go into scoring and points and all of these kinds of things, and we did link information here for anyone that's interested in diving deeper, or certainly I can help answer questions too. But so just as kind of a refresher, especially for any new person we have hearing this for the first time, State and district report cards are designed really just to provide information to the public regarding how are your schools doing, and really looking at data in terms of strengths and areas of growth for your district. I will say I just saw something from DPI again, reminding districts and helping to remind communities that it's not real advantageous to be comparing district to district, and we really put much more emphasis on looking at Somerset year to year and how are we doing. So every report card for the district and for each individual building ends up getting a rating. So it's either on a 5-star system, which is something that's easy to understand, and then you can see some of the points there on the right. The score is calculated by weighting an average of some of the priority scores. And then overall, the district and then each building gets a rating based off of these 5 categories. So this is kind of a lot to look at, but just to kind of orient you a bit to the report card in general. So this is the front-facing first page of every single report card. What you're looking at is actually the front page of the district report card. The 3 buildings have one just like this for their specific building as well. So if you look at the top, kind of where that number 1 is, it gives some descriptive information about enrollment, demographics, those kinds of things. Number 2 there, and I know obviously you can't see it way up on the board, but DPI provides you the option of providing a narrative if there's something that you'd like to say about your district or your building. Looking at number 3 there, that is where you can see the overall score and rating for either the district or the individual building. So our overall score this year as a district was 72.4, and as you can see next to that, that's 4 out of 5 stars, which means the district is exceeding expectations. Number 4 shows you the different priority area weighting in terms of what goes, some of the analytics behind how you get your score. And I will go into that a little bit more in just a second. The priority areas that the state looks at are student achievement, growth, target group outcomes, and on track to graduation, which I will go over a little bit more in just a second. And then number 6 shows you where your district compares to the state. So our district and each of these report cards that you're going to see is in some sort of color, and then gray represents the state. So kind of a big overview, and then we'll go into a little bit more of the details here, not only for the district, for each of the buildings as well. So I mentioned this at our last meeting, but we were really excited as a district to have the 8th highest score in our CISA in terms of our overall district rating. So that's always good news. As a reminder, our CISA is made up of 39 schools, some really big, Hudson and New Richmond, some really small, like our schools way up north. But we're always excited to kind of see, you know, where did we land in terms of specifically schools in our CISA. Okay, so looking at the priority area, so starting with achievement. So this is looking at our state assessments and how students perform specifically on English and math. And it's on a point-based system. So if you have students performing at the advanced level, you get more points. If you have students performing at proficient and basic, and all the way down to non-proficient, and non-proficient means you get 0 points. So obviously the better your kids do, the more points you get, and the better off it is for your overall score. You can see there kind of that bar chart. It shows you where our district landed compared to other districts in the state. So you can see that our score was the same or higher than 83.7 of other districts in the state. Again, that's about as far as DPI goes in terms of comparison, but it gives you a nice visual, and again, it's easy for community to see in terms of where are we compared to other schools in our state. So looking at our achievement, you can see the little circle there. Our score was 71 out of 100, and then it breaks down English underneath that and math as well. So this overall score is up slightly, as you can see in the top right corner. You'll see this on every slide, what our score was last year for each of these areas. So last year, our priority area score for achievement was 69.6. This year, it's 71.0, which was good news. So again, just to kind of orient you a little bit to kind of what you're seeing here. Moving on to growth. So growth is a little bit different than achievement. So this is looking at how students performed on state assessments, again, using the point-based system that I explained before. But this is over a multi-year average. So this isn't just 1 year. This is looking at test scores over the course of the last 3 years. This is where some of those deeper analytics and things come in. But again, it's looking specifically at English language arts and math. You can see, hang on 1 second here. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it at the same time here. You can see where we landed compared to other districts in the state. So our score was the same or higher than 45.3% of districts in the state. If you look at, again, remember this is district, looking at our score in the top right corner, we dipped a bit from our score last year. And then right underneath that priority area score, you can see English was 66 and math was 60, again, across the district. So this is something we always have a lot of discussion about, because growth is really looking at every student has a predicted score based off of their student assessment results the year before, and are kids hitting that predicted score or not? If they are, great, that means they're trending in the right direction. If they're either stagnant, or sometimes we see students going backwards, or they're not hitting that predicted score, then that will negatively impact your growth score. Obviously, the overall goal is that we want every single kid every year hitting that predicted score, because that means every kid in our district is moving up. We know working in a business of children that likely is not going to happen. So then we have a lot of discussions about diving into this data, about looking at that growth. Why aren't kids growing? Are there certain subgroups that are growing more than others? We start to ask a lot of questions about kind of what's happening behind the scenes there. And you'll hear each of them talk about that growth aspect as well. The next area is target group outcomes. So this is the group where we look at, and DPI looks at, in terms of the students that had the lowest test scores of all the students that tested. So basically your 25th percentile and below. And then they take those kids and put them almost in a separate category, and then do a little bit more data digging on those kids, which I'll show you in just a second. Because the idea is, if you have this group of kids that isn't performing well, how are you going to respond as a system, not only to help address and serve the needs of those kids, but potentially, obviously, all of your students. So you can see for target group outcomes here, they look at a combination of scores they look at student achievement, they look at chronic absenteeism, so are those kids coming to school, because we know that likely could impact their scores. We look at growth, which is what I just showed you previously, and then we look at graduation rate and attendance. So all of those things combined go into a target group outcome score, again, for your students that performed with the lowest test scores. We start to then obviously dive into that data a little bit deeper as well, and start to ask some questions, right? But you can see here, again, for the district, our target group outcome scores were 67.7%, the same or higher than 66.7% of districts in the state. So we, of course, would like that needle to move a little bit further. You can see it dipped slightly from the year before. But as I go to the next slide here, DPI takes this information for your target group and then creates kind of its own mini report card. So that, again, if you can kind of see on the left side there, it gives another explanation of looking at those kids that are roughly in the bottom 25th percentile of performance based off of last year's state assessment. And then they look at achievement, growth, absenteeism, and graduation rate, and then they take that information and put that against your non-target group students. So then, as you can see here, the green shows how are the students in that target group performing compared to the students in the non-target group. And you can see it breaks it out between English and math. You can see for achievement, you can see that it happens for growth, you can see the absenteeism and the graduation rate. So looking at chronic absenteeism and graduation, the higher those scores are, the better. That means our kids are coming to school, and it means they're on track to graduate. Both good things, right? When you look above and look at achievement and growth, especially achievement, you can see there's a huge gap between where our target group students are achieving and where our non-target group students are achieving. we want that green bar to be much farther to the right. So that's where kind of the work starts to happen in the buildings to kind of talk about what needs to happen to help address that. If you look at growth, you can see one question that we would have, just to give you an example of some things we dive into. If you look at math, you can see that our students in the target group last year actually outperformed students in our non-target group. That would be a big question, right? What's the why? What's happening there? That means students in our non-target group are not growing at a typical rate. They're not hitting their predicted score at the same rate as students in the target group. That's a big red flag that we've already had lots of conversations about, right? Just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things we look at. And then the last area that I'll talk about for the district is looking at on track to graduation. So again, this looks at combining scores, looking at student engagement and achievement. So again, our students coming to school, and when they're here, how are they doing? And then they roll all of that into some fancy formula to determine, are your kids on track to graduate? So good news, you can see that our score is the same or higher than 87.4 of districts in the state, up slightly from last year, which is always great. So right now we're doing well in that area, and we feel good about that. So kind of moving on to the elementary school, as you will see, as the three of them kind of give you a snapshot of now the building level report cards. Now we kind of start to filter down to the next level. So I've been talking district-wide. Now you'll hear them talk about what's happening in the specific building. So we'll start with Pam.
All right. So if you look at our overall, we stayed at exceeds expectations, but we did have a slight dip of 1.5%, which we weren't surprised because we knew we had some dips in our ELA scores. And so overall, slight 1.5% dip. But where it's interesting is if you go to our priority area scores and our achievement overall scores are actually up 1.6%. So our kids, help me with this, guys. So our kids are outperforming the state in both ELA and math, and so that's great. But what's interesting then is if you, and you move over to growth, our growth score is exactly the same as it was the year before. So it did not change at all. So if you factor in achievement went up, but our overall score, our kids dipped in ELA, but it factored into growth being exactly the same. So it's just kind of an odd thing. We did not have target group outcomes because our kiddos did not take the test in 2020, and you need 2 years of data, and so it took us this long to kind of catch back up, if you will, for third graders into fourth grade. So this is new for us. We haven't had this, and as Shannon said, we use this for our continuous improvement. So we're looking here at a 66.9% group. We're looking at where are we on like, where do we want to see things, kind of what's making our eyes go, okay, this is what we need to work on. We know we've talked a lot about ELA, but we also know we're talking about math and how do we get those scores up. But it's tricky because we don't really have a comparison yet. The other piece that's tricky for us is of our 6th grades, only 2 test in our building. So we see them in 3rd grade to 4th grade, but when they test in 4th grade, they're off to Sarah. So it's kind of tricky to see how do we use, looking in, we don't want to spend too much time looking in the rearview mirror, but how do we use some of that to help us move forward with our kids. Another really interesting thing for us is in our on track for graduation, we actually went down with that. And we know that was impacted by our 3rd grade language arts ELA scores dipped, but also our chronic absenteeisms went down a little bit, so went up a little bit. So we're really looking at who are those kids? What do they have medical needs that we know, and really kind of looking at who are those students and how are we making sure kids are getting to school, and then when they're at school that they're getting what they need.
All right. Middle school?
So we did again exceed expectations for this past year. You can see we dropped by 0.2 of a point, but had some pretty big growth from the prior year. So it was expected. I would expected that just a tinge. Our achievement increased again last year, and so you can see our scores there for both ELA and math. Growth-wise, we did dip. However, what I want to point out is last year we went from here to here, And then this past year, we just kind of fell back slightly, but we are still higher growth-wise than we were 2 years ago. We're still growing our students, no matter if they have, you know, a student with an IEP, if they're economically disadvantaged, we're still growing them faster than what would be predicted. And so we're above like what they call that 3.0 line when they do a bunch of fancy metrics in the background. That if you took all those factors out, are we still growing our kids? And we are. So that's a good thing. We still can look at, you know, if you look at our target groups there, we have, you know, clearly more to grow on with that. That score as well dipped just a little bit because like Pam said, where she only has really one grade level that she can look at that piece, I have all 4. And so we look at all of that and going in. And again, that one dipped a little bit like our growth did, but not so much that I have cause for concern because we're not where we were 2 years ago. We're still ahead. And a year ago, we had some pretty big growth out of all of our students. But it gives us, like I had shared with you a month ago, the opportunity to look at what we're doing for Tier 1 for all of our kids because we don't get to know who all the students who are economically disadvantaged and identified as that are. So we look at that piece. And then on track to graduation, where Pam gets double counted for ELA in 3rd grade, we get double counted for 8th grade math. And so we have consistently been growing on that and have been above the state. And that space grew for us from the year prior to this last year. So we're seeing some areas for growth, but also some pieces where we can look at what do we need to do at that Tier 1 level so that we're making sure all kids are getting what they need to go and grow. That's what I got.
Thank you. High school?
All right, so at the high school, one thing that was different for us this year is we were navigating a new assessment with our 9th and 10th graders where they were using ACT Aspire before, and we switched, the state DPI switches to pre-ACT Secure. So the good news is moving forward that we believe that will align better for our kids as they move and prepare for the ACT. It was a little bit of uncharted waters. We were navigating that assessment for the first time last year. So as we get a second year now with that assessment, it'll give us a better comparison from year to year with that. In regards to achievement, we obviously want to achieve at high levels, who doesn't? But we were at the same or higher than 75.1% of the schools in the state of Wisconsin, which we feel good about. And both ELA and math increased by about 2 in that regard. In regarding growth, obviously achieving at high levels is important, but continuing to grow and continuing to improve is something that's a focus area for us moving forward. Math did see an increase in this area by about 6, but we're still working to close that gap with where we're at in comparison to the state. English did see a dip in this area this year compared to previous years, so we'll just be examining that a little bit closer as a group. And then again, getting to know the assessment that the kids in 9th and 10th grade are taking into the second year here. We feel like that'll give us better information as they proceed through it. In regards to our target group, we did see a significant dip with that, so we're examining our intervention. We have dedicated time to that with that for students that we're just kind of reanalyzing how we're utilizing that to better leverage that time and just overall response to students, support our students. One thing that we did notice with this is our graduation rate in that. Your score went from an 82.8 up to a 96.9, so we saw a significant increase in that, and then our chronic absenteeism took a positive step forward with our target group as well. So on track to graduation, we feel really good about this area on our report card. It increased to 95 score. The state score is typically at like a 78. So again, we feel really good about where we're at in comparisons to the state. But we feel like we've been intentional about communicating with families in regards to their attendance, being really proactive, notifying them if they're at a 3-day mark, a 5-day mark, or a 7-day mark, so things don't get to those 10-day marks, and just having a better understanding of the why kids are gone, if it's medically related, or how we can just best support our kids in creating attendance plans. So some things that wouldn't show up in the school report card, like the score itself, are kind of at the back of the report card. So these I don't believe factor into the overall score, but I think they're worth noting. So advanced courses, we had 26.5% of our students that can factor in versus 20.1 at the state level. Dual enrollment courses, 29.4% at Somerset High School compared to 23.2 at the state level. Our work-based learning, 16.6% at Somerset High School compared to 8.5% at the state level. So again, those things aren't necessarily gonna show up on our score per se, but those are all things that we feel set us apart at Somerset and things that we're doing well. And the bottom line is our kids, from what we're seeing with the attendance piece and the on-track piece, is that our kids wanna be at school. They're coming to school, which is great. We have a high level of engagement with our kids beyond the school day in participation in athletics and activities. And that relationships matter. Kids aren't coming to school if they don't have strong relationships with their staff. And that's something we want to continue to capitalize on. And for us next, just continuing to focus on intentional use of our resources, examining our intervention time that we're using for our kids, for all students to have access to their teachers. And actually just recently we got our practice ACT results back from our kids, so we'll be doing a dive into that to kind of see where our kids are at as we move forward for assessment season this school year.
All right, so the last slide we have is just, as we sat together and just talked about what are some kind of overall district takeaways. I know you've heard me say this before. This is, certainly just one piece of data that we look at. And kind of diving into all of the questions and the data from the report card, continuing to really be intentional about our professional development for our staff. What tools and trainings that we bring to them to be able to give them the tools and be able to equip them the best that we can to be able to do the great things they're doing in the classrooms. One example of that is, Sarah mentioning assessing what they're doing for their Tier 1 instruction. You've heard many of them talk about their interventions. Really thinking about how do we best use the time and the resources that we have when we have the kids here throughout the school day. Looking at 90-day plans, as just kind of a reminder, every building has an overall building goal that we've talked about here publicly, and I know you guys on the board see it every single week, and really kind of chunking out those goals into 3 separate little mini 90-day plans where buildings talk about what are the action steps that need to happen in order for the buildings to be able to reach those goals. The report card is one component that buildings look at to help determine what does the goal need to be, each school year. And then doing a lot of resource review. So you've heard Trish talk about, I know she's provided some information as well in the weekend updates about, and I know Pam specifically has talked about that first bullet point with Act 20 now upon us, really diving into the science of reading. What does that look like? Our elementary going through the top 10 teacher tools training. Our elementary all the way through 5th grade is in year 2 of their ELA resource implementation. That was a new resource last year. Elementary starting the process of looking at a new math resource. And I know Pam has had a team going through that process as well. And then our middle school and high school engaging in a collaborative book study called Building Thinking Classrooms. And I know we're about halfway through that. I know Sarah's been sitting in on those quite a bit too. Just to continue to bring some tools again into the tool belt of our staff. We know that math, specifically at the high school level, continues to be an area that we are monitoring and looking at. So how do we continue to bring some resources and information to be able to kind of tackle some of those things. So, and then the last part is just our strategic plan, wrapping everything that we do. I put a little graphic in here about our students and our staff component. Those things fit perfectly into these conversations, and again, really being intentional about our time and our resources so that they are addressing and celebrating certainly our areas of strength, but also diving into, looking at, hey, where are some areas that we need to grow? We know not everything is always sunshine and rainbows. I tend to default to celebrations and things that are going well, but also needing to recognize when there's areas that we need to kind of come together on and how do we continue to be better. So that really is, again, kind of the 50,000-foot view. The report card is multiple pages long. There's lots more detailed information in there that certainly anyone can access. People can see these on our website as well. Principals and myself can certainly help answer any in-depth questions, but we're excited about what we saw, and it also gives us a good roadmap for some areas that we need to dive into. So with that, I'm going to transition unless there's questions, of course.
Thank you, that was really detailed and that helped explain it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I had one more thing, didn't I? Sorry. Switching gears, are we good on the report card? Okay. The other thing that I had is simple, but wanted to just bring it up to this group. Our next meeting is the same night as the winter band and choir concert at the high school. I would like to suggest that we move up our meeting time on the 18th to be able to allow not only us certainly to attend, but parents and community and things like that. So I'd like to suggest that we move up our meeting time on the 18th to 5 o'clock. That would give us plenty of time to have a regular meeting, and then we will have a closed session to finish the second half of my evaluation. Certainly just a recommendation. As a board, you can determine if you want to change the time or not, but I know we've tried in the past to be cognizant of when board meetings fall on nights of concerts, because we know those don't happen all that often. So I want to put that on the table in case there's interest in potentially altering the start time of our next meeting.
And then we had said to not have a listening session. To put that-
Most likely that would mean December wouldn't have a listening session, and then we'd pick it up in January.
We did have a listening session in November,
Yes.
but October, was it October that we did not? Because it seems like there was another one lately that we.
Yeah,
It
I
must have
think
been
it was October.
Oh, because we did a closed session prior.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm available if you want to discuss this now, or do you want people to email?
I'm good with it.
You good, Marge?
Yeah.
I'm good with it. Are you good, Corey?
Yep.
Okay. Let's just go ahead and.
5 o'clock?
Do we have to make a motion or anything? Good.
Probably.
Alright.
Mhm.
I'll make a motion that we change the start time of our December 18th board meeting to 5 o'clock and eliminate the listening session for that evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before we
Yeah.
go on, I was just wondering about the state report cards. In, I think it was 2021, the state lowered the cutoff scores for each category. Not significantly exceeds expectations, that stayed the same, but the other categories, the score cutoff was lowered. Has there been any discussion from DPI about moving those cutoff scores back to what they were prior to COVID?
I haven't heard anything.
I have heard nothing. They mentioned, so Trish and I attended the fall training because they are making some changes to the overall architecture of the forward exam for the spring. And they did not mention anything about cut scores. They are going to be renaming the achievement levels from like advanced, proficient, basic, below basic, but they did not have what they were going to be renaming them. But as far as the report card, they did not talk anything about changing the cut scores again for it.
Thank you.
But this is the first year now where there is no COVID gap year, right? So now everything we're seeing now is just straight post-COVID scores, before where we had that 1 year that was hanging out there.
Any other questions? Okay, then moving on to our policy review. We did get some questions answered as far as with 25-21 selection of instructional materials and equipment. And that has been on our agenda for several times now. And then was added was 25-10, the adoption of textbooks. That's the first time, so that will then carry over again to our next meeting as well. Lori, did you want to talk at all to that, or do you want me to read part of Chris's response?
Just that,
Or Marge?
we reached out to Neola regarding the questions about the wording of the first two paragraphs that were added. And the consensus was that everybody is good with the policy the way it is. I had brought up in that green part, the addition of the language, textbooks as defined in policy 2510 are not included in this definition or policy. And Chris, our Neola representative, has mentioned several times that policy 2510 is, he considers it an important one that he would recommend all school districts have. And I had asked about putting that back in and adopting that policy 2510, which is why it's on the agenda for tonight. But as far as the policy 2521 goes, the policy committee is good with what's in front of you, so we can finally pass this one if we'd like.
And just, Ian wasn't feeling well, but he said, just in that response to thanks for the clarification. It does help understand, and just kind of did say, it's some excessive and maybe unnecessary, but it doesn't really change it. It's just more wording. So are we good with 2521?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 2521 as attached to the agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Then looking at the 2510 adoption of textbooks, we currently don't have this policy. So what is attached to the agenda is the recommendation from Neola
It's a template.
a template.
And there are many choices that would need to be selected or not selected. And I did ask Shannon if she could forward this to Trish and ask if Trish had any recommendations.
Yes.
So I had shared with you her memo. I initially shared it with just the policy committee, I think. And then earlier today, I shared it with the rest of you.
Sorry, I saw it earlier and now I cannot. Oh, here we go. Was everybody able to read that?
I read it, I can't find it now.
I know, it's kind of been a,
I did reach out to Chris at Neola about it. It's hard to talk about it though without seeing where it is.
so one of the key things that, one of Tricia's responses back was that the reason it was removed, do you know when it was removed? Does anybody know when?
It's been a couple
taken out?
years.
I would say more than a couple because I don't remember it happening since we've had a policy committee.
Well, in my time on, I don't remember removing it.
What's said on there?
But one of the reasons that it was
Well,
initially
she said several
removed,
years ago,
Okay.
so whatever that means.
was because as resources changed to include online, virtual school or Northwoods, college in the schools, et cetera, the timelines to go through board approval were barriers to student learning. So there's often update materials or purchase resources mid-year for courses that are in progress or having starting dates in a matter of a few weeks. And then additionally, the curriculum budget often isn't enough to cover a larger adoption, like the 6 through 12 ELA, the K through 5 ELA, and the 6 through 12 math. So there's two different budgets that are used for that.
When I originally looked at the template for 2510, I thought, no, we do all this stuff anyway, because Trish has been in front of the board presenting ELA and math curriculum and science and social studies in the past. So I understand her concerns about the 2 budget years, and I understand the concerns about timelines, especially when we have classes. For example, I think I remember one about a college and schools class where we had to adopt a textbook with a tight deadline. So I understand the problem with our work session and then our regular session for approval. I was wondering, do we have because one of the things that we want to make sure of is that we have a process or guidelines in place when we are selecting textbooks. Do we have guidelines that incorporate some of the main ideas of this policy?
So just so I'm clear, when you say guidelines, are you talking about administrative guidelines? Like
Or-
formally or whatever process through that? Yeah.
Either of those.
Yeah, I couldn't produce it at this second, but I know she has a pretty rigorous process that she goes through, and I don't know if, Pam or Sarah, you can speak to, because you've kind of been through that on you know, the other end kind of with her, but, and I know she speaks to it a little bit in this memo of, field testing, 2 separate resources, doing it via committee. I'm sure she
Look at
has
anything
something.
Like through Ed Reports, which is it's a nonprofit that vets against, that vets resources against the standards, and they get fully green lighted, partially green lighted, or like do not use, because it doesn't meet either the standard or the rigor for the level at which we are expected to teach it. And so that's kind of the starting point. And Ed Reports does a really great job of saying, like, these are the ones. And so anything that we have adopted in the last so many years has been vetted against Ed Reports. If you remember years ago when they adopted a resource at the elementary school, we had to do that, they do that work themselves. And they landed on something that as soon as Ed Reports took looks at it, was like, nope, that is not, like, it's not at even close to the level. And so now we're using one that has been vetted. And so that's really been the big process there, making sure we are hitting all of those pieces that are in, I think, paragraph 2, as far as making sure that it's not only hitting the standards, but an equitable resource as well.
That's what I was specifically wondering about. So you're talking about paragraph 2 of the
I would say,
policy 2510.
yeah, that it looks
Right.
at all of, those.
So-
And Trish could correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm, she's not watching right now, but like, we do, I mean, it's pretty, like, we went through and we vetted and we looked at this option versus that option, and, paging through it and making sure that it, all voices are represented, and, it's not discriminatory in any manner, for our students.
Right. So I guess that's what I would ask. If Tricia's requesting that we do not adopt this policy because of timeline issues, so I'm fine with that. How if we have an administrative guideline in place that addresses some of these issues, so that we have a standard in place and a rubric kind of thing of what we're looking for. And so we have the evidence to show people in the community, if there are questions
Sure.
raised, that we've gone through this process and looked at these items.
So you're looking for something in writing that addresses and outlines the process?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
I'd feel comfortable with that. How does the rest of the board feel?
What did you say about Chris's opinion about this policy? You mentioned that, didn't you, earlier?
Yeah, just a second, let me find that. He said, he said several times as we've been asking him questions about policy 2521, and that's why he put 2510 in our templates in our board docs for review several months ago.
Yeah.
And he said that the main reason I recommend that a board have this policy in place is that they have a selection process in writing, kind of like what
Right.
I'm asking you to take the place of this.
Yep.
That would support any challenges to your selected material.
Okay,
That was his response.
Okay. And then second, do you know, Trish said in her memo, if we adopt it, she's in favor of selection 1? Do you know what
Yeah,
she's
I didn't
referring to?
understand.
I think she meant letter A. And I can confirm with her, because I actually saw that as well. Because I think, kind of back to what has been brought up earlier, I think she felt like much of the other choices, B through H, are addressed in paragraph 2. But maybe don't 100% quote me on that, I think.
Wouldn't you want all of those selected?
I didn't understand what she meant by selection 1 either. So maybe she could just
I can
clarify
double check,
that.
because now that I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, well, I wonder if it was the bottom part of,
When I say
The
selection
district
1, that's what that
administrator.
one looks like to me, is that exactly what you're asking for.
Versus A
or
through
the
H?
guidelines.
Sarah,
Yeah.
versus A through H. So why don't I double check?
Can you?
Because that's the only, anyway. okay,
Yeah, can you just
selection.
speak to then, I guess I'm not really wrapping my head around why the budget impact, the timing, and why we can't have this policy. I don't, why does having this policy suddenly impact the ability to buy and acquire these textbooks? Why can't we move the process up 2 weeks or a week and a half to start so that it can come to the board?
Well, first of all, I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying, based off of what she described, because I also don't remember all of the details behind why it went away. So for example, this year, 2 weeks before school started, we received a memo from Northwoods that one of the classes we teach here, the old books gotta go and you've got 2 weeks to get the new books in. Like, one example that, like, there literally wouldn't have been an opportunity to bring it before the board 2 times, those kinds of things. One example of, I think, what she's kind of getting at, and I think, and I'm just going by what she has in here, I think, from the board perspective, is you are approving the standards, which you do every year, and approving her budget, then I think the idea is then actually choosing the textbooks would go down to kind of that next level. Versus, I guess, the board essentially saying, yes, you can have this textbook, or no, you can't, because the board wouldn't necessarily be involved in the process all along the way. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah, I guess.
I'm not saying we should or shouldn't have it. I'm just kind of going by what she has here. And I don't know if there's a workaround to avoid, because, the example that Lori brought up too, I mean, those things happen frequently. And I think looking at the 2 fiscal years, that adds another layer of complexity to it too. If there's some way to avoid, sure. I mean, great.
In that Northwoods example, couldn't that just come to the board in one meeting for possible action if it was a exigent circumstance that had to be dealt with? Why would we have to see it 2 times?
As long as it's listed on the agenda.
As possible?
Great, yeah. That's just one example of, like,
Yeah, no, I know, I'm just
sometimes
trying
you don't, like, some of these things,
understand.
like math, for example, that you're going through, I mean, this will be a months-long process where plenty of time to be able to hit all of the requirements of bringing something here twice, right? That isn't always the case. And so I think ensuring there's enough flexibility, whatever that looks like, of when certain circumstances do come up, the Northwoods example, it's just an easy one, unavoidable, and we have no choice. I mean, that isn't even something the board could say, like, nope, you can't have that textbook, like.
And,
You know what I mean?
I don't, that's a Northwoods course, so
Right.
we wouldn't be
Right.
approving that textbook anyway, I don't.
Or our
think.
U of M courses or things like that, right?
Yeah,
You know, so,
I guess I just look at this and I go, well,
Yep.
why not adopt it?
No.
It shouldn't impact all of the work you guys do, but it at least adds that layer to say, if the board is aware and something didn't slip through, I mean, I'm not saying it does,
Sure.
but.
I think the
that's
process
all.
part is
I'm just-
important, right? I think, like,
The what?
the process part, that I think that's kind of what you're getting at, of, like, ensuring that everyone has a good understanding of what were the steps and the checks and balances when determining a resource. And I think I've talked to Chris about, and Chris doesn't make this decision, but even the word textbook is antiquated, because we know that resources look 1,000 different ways now, and it's not just the old, here's your big 300-page book, right? Because he and I had this conversation probably a month ago, of just like, okay, it wasn't just this policy, there was multiple that I brought up of, like, how do we bring this into almost 2024? Because there's lots of references to lots of things that, in my opinion, aren't necessarily applicable to how we do business in a school in 2024. So regardless, great. I think if, what I'm hearing you say is, if it, having something that is a clear, transparent process of whatever's being used, and if it's through this, great, then I can have her produce something too of, like, an outline of, not that that has to replace this, if this is what the board wants to do, no problem. But what I'm hearing is that the biggest concern, or not concern, is having a transparent process of what are the steps that are happening to come to these decisions. Yes?
Well, I mean, it's in front of us now.
Question mark?
I don't think anybody went looking for this. Chris said, hey, you should probably have it, it's in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer to adopt a policy over just having a guideline, because I think that, I would prefer to have a policy. The other thing, though, I just want to make sure that it doesn't hinder the selection process. This doesn't get in the way of anyone picking textbooks. It's simply a step along the way. That would be the only other thing, is if we adopted it, I don't want it to interfere with selection, purchase, implementation.
Right.
Well, and this is the principal source of instructional material, is how a textbook is defined in this policy. So this
Mhm.
isn't, I mean, I'm just thinking as a board, like every little, every piece that's used then comes for our
Supplemental.
selection.
Right.
I'm
That's not
thinking
it.
like-
That's not
right,
this.
I'm thinking like big curriculum type
Mhm.
pieces.
Mhm.
Um,
So basically what Pam and the elementary are going through right now, looking at math resources, right?
Which is why I thought this would be an easy policy to adopt, because I think we do all of this stuff anyway.
Mhm.
When we do get
Oh, we definitely do.
big curriculums, when different things are put in, does that, I know parents don't like vote on it, but is that shown to parents prior to implementing, or kind of like informational meetings, just kind of as we're talking about being, transparent with how things are selected, but how that goes about, kind of in response to what, I don't know, making parents aware of, what curriculum it is, kind of what that might entail, those types of things.
My answer is not formally.
Yeah.
However, at the monthly parent group meetings, they
Yeah.
talk about what's going on in the
Mhm.
school and things, so I maybe inform, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to be wrong, but I probably mentioned it, not, like we don't do a formal presentation, or we didn't with the ELA adoption.
So currently, if we want to then continue, we would add 2510 on the adoption of textbooks on our next agenda. But I do want to go back as the policy we just voted yes for, 2521, does have the defined in policy 2510, the adoption of textbooks stricken.
That would just be a technical
Yeah.
correction
Okay.
that could be made
Okay.
without even coming to the board.
Okay. So let's go ahead and moving forward, we'll have that on the agenda for next meeting. And what's that?
Anybody else have any comments about it?
Anybody else want to say anything?
We were kind of going down the line, that's all. I'm not sure nobody.
Well, and I think in the meantime, if we
So
have.
bring it back, get some, okay.
Yeah, I think in the meantime, if you have specific questions for Trish or additional things that you might think of, I think to throw them her way. Anything else with that? Okay, then looking forward with our topics for action, looking at the personnel update, the athletics activities personnel update, the WOLD invoices, and our minutes of the November 20th. Is there any discussion, or is somebody interested in taking action on those?
Make a motion to approve 11A, B, C, and D.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, opposed. Okay, motion carries. Sorry. Okay, district celebrations. Matt, do you want to start us out?
I don't think I have anything.
It was just really neat to hear the report cards and all of that information, so thank you for sharing that.
Yes, same thing. Thanks for presenting that tonight. That's good news. Moving in the right direction. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Marge?
I went to Clue on Friday night, it was excellent. It was great, they put a lot of hard work into that, they did a good job, all of them.
Corey?
Quick little fact.
Yeah?
That is the last play that will be in the NPR. Everyone after that will be in the auditorium. Okay.
Sure.
sorry.
What about next year?
December.
Yeah.
We won't have it open
Yeah, I don't
Or
think so.
next year, yeah.
Just stay tuned.
Sorry.
We've got a plan.
I thought he had said in a previous meeting that it was gonna be open in like December
Yeah, I thought
of
so too.
24,
It will.
but that's not what he said tonight.
I know. Yep.
Corey?
I just want to echo what they said. Thank you. The report cards. Appreciate it.
And my husband and I went to Clue on Saturday night, and that was a spectacular performance with a different cast. They have a double cast for the plays, and congratulations to all the students involved and to the directors. Becky Olson, who's been directing plays for many years here, she's Jem and Britta and Michaela, high school teachers as well, their first time directing. Thank you. Great job for everybody.
Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All
I'm
in
sorry, who
favor?
seconded that?
Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned at 8:50.
7.
Wait, what?
I'm sorry, 7:50.
7:40.
Oh my God, it's been a long day. Superintendent reviews, make sure you're.